Hello and welcome to GuyLogic. My name is Temko and this is a look at Zenith, a new action RPG from the guys and girls over at Infinigon. I'm pretty sure I'm mispronouncing that name, but sorry, can do better. The game is published by Badland Games, which is about the same studio, and it's their first title as far as I can tell. And what is it, you might ask? Well, as I said, it's an action RPG where you play a wizard warrior that has a bunch of spells and you kill a bunch of enemies while solving the story, and you do so by a bunch of semi-linear quests throughout the world, in a variety of well put together locations and vistas, I must say. But before we dive into the actual gameplay of this pretty interesting action RPG, let's go ahead and talk about options and settings. First things first, the game does not have much of a settings menu to speak of, because this is it. It's a Unity game, so outside of these two settings, you can change some resolution options in the launcher window, as well as some graphical presets. But other than that, you have no visual, audio, or otherwise any options available whatsoever. And one of the major things with this game is that audio options would have been a nice requirement just to be able to mute the damn repetitive music, because it is atrocious. Other than that, the game does run at 60 FPS at any given time. I've not had it run higher than that, so I'm not sure if it's locked to 60, but such is the case. Also, I have no idea whether or not VSync, G-Sync, or anything else is enabled, available, or otherwise used, because frankly, the game doesn't tell you in any given time, which is a damn shame. Which really does also bring us to the end of the options menu. Not exactly great, I would say. While the game does run fine and I've not had any crashes or experienced any bugs with the game, the very abysmal options menu does make it quite saddening to see that even something as subtitle options, different language options, even something as fairly straightforward as the ability to change resolution in game is not available, or even audio levels or graphical presets not available in the game, just available on the outside launcher, and even then only very few things are available in the outside launcher. Very subpar, not good at all. But what about the game itself? Well, let's go ahead and dive into the game itself and talk a little bit about that, and I can show you my complaints regarding that as well. So I'm going to press resume here, which is the last save I did in the game. And that brings us to a nice little inn, and most of the game is played by your character running around and interacting with a bunch of objects. The objects glow up and then you can talk to them and do stuff with them. As you can see, the variety of scenes are pretty well put together, but for an RPG they are not very interactive. In this room, I can only interact with this girl, who is my companion on this quest. This is glowing orb, which is my save point. And I can interact with the bed, which is it. And that's a damn shame, because most of the places and areas in the game are like this, with a very limited variety of interactive elements and moments that, well, are generally really brought down by the absolutely atrocious writing. One of the things that I've run into with this game is that they have so many references and anecdotes and things put into this that breaks the immersion of the world they're trying to build. Let me give you an example. Does somebody recognize this fine gentleman sitting here? This man who was in a horned helmet, who used to be an adventurer, and then horrible things happened. Well, what horrible things could happen? I wonder if they're talking about Skyrim and Skyrim mods and how weird the Skyrim mods can be. Well, conversations like this are not the exception, they're more the norm. And that is a damn shame, because the world they're trying to build in this game is actually quite interesting in and of itself. And the amount of references here, in this case Skyrim, but I've had Forrest Gump references in the name of an inn. I've had Final Fantasy references in moody characters with Cloud and whatnot. And every single one of them breaks immersion to the point where, well, frankly, it just didn't make me want to play the game any further. And that is a damn shame. Now, the game has a second component, which is the overworld map, which is exactly what it looks like. It's an overworld map. You run into it until you hit a loading screen or find an interactive object to meet with. I have preferred they'd never implemented this at all, because it's buggy in the sense that you can break the line of sight of creatures by going to trees and they'll instantly reset. You can break this by messing with them. You can run over water, you can run over mountains, impersonal terrain, and there really isn't any reason for this to exist outside of random, pseudo-random encounters you can choose to do, but that neither provide you a incentive or a reward, neither monetary nor in items, that I've encountered in any form or fashion, which means that you're wasting health potions and resources killing these various monsters without actually getting shit in return, and that doesn't make sense. Now, the game is in part about you trying to keep a scepter out of a big bad guy. While I'm really interested in the actual story itself regarding the game, the various issues that the game encounters, like pulling away the variety of control away from the character with unnecessarily badly written cutscenes, with absolutely horrendous sound assets, as you can see, and there is a bunch of other things here that are absolutely immersion breaking. You just saw on screen how a crow took a magical priceless artifact, and this is something that's been going on with the game repeatedly now. There is no actual reason or rhyme to anything that's happening except contrived happenstance that makes a interesting, if very, very bad joke of it. Everything from the way the character interacts with things, to the way the quests evolve, to the way interaction goes, even to the way you encounter enemies and how to do stuff. In the very first 5 minutes of the game, you encounter singing spiders. How do you encounter singing spiders? You encounter singing spiders by them jumping on a bunch of elves that are about as smart as a bunch of gerbils, which is, from an elite elven force as you are losing a war against them, doesn't actually sound that logical, which is really, really, again, very immersion breaking. Now, moving on from the variety of issues with the story, art, sound, and so on, the game's combat system actually does make some sense, but it is also very limited in what it can do. The issues with this are twofold. One, you have a couple of abilities. You have a ranged ability that you can use by having a gem of one of 3 types, water, fire, or earth. You have a melee ability, which is again one of 3 types. And then you have a couple of items that give you a roll or other stats otherwise. The problem is, if you head into the stats menu and you can go into the equipment menu, and again, no rebindable keys means that this is only accessible to escape. There is no other way to do anything with this. So, that's interesting in and of itself. You can see some equipment on your left side. You have my sword, we have a scroll, I can exchange that scroll if I have a different in my inventory, have a bunch of potions here, and so on and so forth. You get some gear, you equip the gear, and that's it. But if you look at gear, for example these boots, I can see that these boots give me +3 on my earth because they give 6 earth, which you can see on the right side, but they will reduce my water by -7. Why? Because they don't actually have water on them. But if I go to my actually equipped boots, it doesn't tell me what they are because it doesn't hover over them. If I go to my weapons or otherwise equipped items, it doesn't show what they are. If I hover over my mana or health potions, again, it doesn't show me how much they heal. If I check my weapon against a different type of weapon, again, it doesn't show what it does. And this is the same for all various resources. If I head into my ability tree, and I look at abilities, it doesn't really tell me anything. I mean, it says here adds fire affinity by 2% for each point spent. 2% of what? 2% of my melee damage? 2% to every fire ability? 2% to my ranged ability? Does that mean if I focus on this, is it smart to also get a hammer ability? Does that even matter? It doesn't show me which abilities I can pick, and the ability points you get are very, very tedious and slow to get, and again are not explained. So a lot of the games boils down to trial and error, with most of it being error because the game badly explains itself. So while the combat system might have been interesting from that angle, its very repetitive nature of 3 spells and abilities just make it very boring. Couple that with the fact that you have no way to heal yourself outside of health potions that you purchase, then just use repeatedly. And you also have no way of fighting in melee or using a shield outside of this shield which you cannot fight with. So if you're facing multiple opponents, you'll be using a shield constantly just so you can survive to get a hit in. Also, rolling doesn't give invulnerability frames, which is insanity in and of itself, because you can't attack in that stance and you can't reposition in that stance. So that too is an issue. I'm genuinely wondering what the developers were thinking when they were implementing half the systems in this game. Because everything else in the game is, well, subpar, and if not, just plain bad. On top of all the issues with rebindable controls, on top of all the issues with the combat system being a left mouse button spamming thing, chugging potions and not doing much else, it boils down to the variety of boss fights, puzzles, and combat scenes. The puzzles are basically linear little things you can solve within a minute. They have no depth to them, no logic to them, and they are not multi-part puzzles. There's actually no challenge to them whatsoever. that is a damn shame, because one of the things I think would have redeemed this game a little bit is it had actually good puzzles. But even when the puzzles are somewhat interesting, they are brought down by either the very bad animation quality of the game, the very bad way of doing certain combat mechanics, or just the contrived methods you have to use to interact with certain puzzle pieces. And that is a damn shame. Now, while I enjoy the cutscenes and the like in the game, again, they suffer from a massive amount of indie developer issues, where while the issues themselves are okay to have, when the game only has those issues and nothing else to offer, they turn a little bit sour. I'll give you an example here, is that one of the things I ran into is movement is really fiddly, and throwing objects while you are doing something is also really annoying. You can't aim properly. It auto-targets, but again, you can't aim properly, so it often auto-targets the wrong target. And other minor issues like that, when all brought together, really result in a very subpar experience throughout the title. On top of all of that, the music just doesn't get any better. And I've said it a couple of times now, but this music is atrocious and it really brings down the experience quite a bit. Now, the final critique I want to give to this game is the camera, which is locked in a specific degree, but the game doesn't mind that. It'll still render monsters, objects, chests, moving paths, doorways, passages behind areas you can't actually look at because they are either behind a fold, behind a pillar, behind a mountain, behind a tree, and you can't even interact with them other than good faith luck running there and spamming your E button for interacting with them. I feel that while the developers have probably had a pretty good idea what they were trying to do, and while from a pure technical standpoint, the game does pull a decently competent effort at doing that, everything they have tried to finish is, well, plain bad actually. And if they had spent more time improving the control scheme, if they had spent more time improving the magic system, if they had spent any time at all on the sound design, this would have been a much better title. Instead, we have subpar animations in a pretty interesting world with some of the worst writing in any game I've encountered in ages. And that is a damn shame. So yeah, Zenith. Check it out on Steam if you'd like to, though I would suggest you don't. It's coming out on September the 20th, and if you like this video, press the like button below. If you didn't like this video, well, there's a dislike button for exactly that, and leave a comment. Tell us what we did great, tell us what we can do better, because we want to hear back from all of you. And if you want to see more content like this on the channel, just press that subscribe button down below and we will deliver. And until then, I wish you a good day, and until next time, right here on GuyLogic.